Hello coders, hello. Good morning, it is 7:32 British summertime. Welcome to the How to Code Well morning live stream on Twitch. Hello, welcome. Today we're going to get involved with the PHP OOP project that I've been doing. I've been doing it for quite a while now. It's an invoicing application. It's the application that I'm going to be using for the FreeCodeCamp PHP OOP course that I will eventually get around to create. And the application is the invoicing application, as I mentioned. It is a very straightforward, I guess, app in terms of the UI. There is the ability to create an invoice. The invoice has a customer, a status, and also items within the invoice itself. It doesn't use any frameworks. It doesn't use any fancy libraries, apart from Codeception, which is on top of PHP unit. So it's all raw. It's using MySQL, and of course it's using Docker. So what I would like to do in today's stream is basically take a look at the code and see if there's any areas that we can refactor or we are missing tests with, and just basically generally give it a bit of a once over, because I haven't done this in a long time. I haven't used this project in a long time. In fact, I had to remind myself the commands of actually running this this morning, because it has been like a week or so. Plus, personally myself, I've been dealing with all sorts of projects. And your mind gets segmented in different projects and stuff. So I need to remember this myself. So let's go into the code and just take a look and see where we are at. So, okay. First of all, let's take a look at the structure of this code. So we've got, this is the top level. We have the Apache folder, app folder, MySQL, public, there's an src, that's where all the magic happens. We've got some tests, and of course we've got vendor. That looks pretty good to me. There's nothing crazy there out of the blue. With Apache we have the conf, so we've got default, that's the virtual host. We've got the PHP file, that's the PHP ini. They get passed in, I believe, in the Docker the Docker compose file. At this point here, we're only dealing with Apache. We're not dealing with PHP. Oh yes, we are dealing with PHP. I do apologize. So we are putting that in. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so they're needed. That's good. Okay, so in the app directory then, what have we got? We've got app, and we've got config. In the config, we've got a bootstrap file. Okay, so this file uses a bunch of other things. Factory validation type and validator. Okay. Okay, so what's it doing? It's requiring once the configuration, which is in here. So this is a bunch of defined constants in PHP, defining the paths and other various things. That's good. Okay, so then we've got the require once. This is the base path. That's now requiring the autoloader, which is within vendor. Okay, good. And then we're requiring config path routing.php. That looks a little bit crazy, isn't it? It's saying that the config path is in root data. That's a bit interesting. So let's have a look at that, routing.php. So this is an array. That's what it is. Okay. Fine. And the array has the patterns, so I can put in invoice and then ID. It goes to the action. This is the parameters. So it does a bit of routing here. That's good. Okay, after that, what are we doing? We're validating the routes. We're validating the patterns and the controllers and the actions. Okay, that's good. There's a little bit of validation going on. Factories, creating the routes, making the routes, validating the routes, and then returning the routes. So this whole mechanism really is more of less of a bootstrap, more of a route creation mechanism, because it's doing anything. It's not doing anything else but making the routes. So maybe that could be changed. Maybe that can be changed. These are the only two things that are not used for the roots. So these two files. So when I'm refactoring code, I kind of look at this and go, well, it's called bootstrap.php, but really, could it be called something else that makes more sense? Routing.php is actually named what Bootstrap should be, in my opinion, because this is dealing with the routing. The routing is configured here. So maybe we should change that. Maybe we should go ahead and change that. I don't know. Possibly. All right, let's move on. So what happens after the bootstrap? Well, I guess we should take it from the top. Let's go to public and then index.php. So, okay, we're doing roots and then requiring once the bootstrap. So this, to me, doesn't make any sense, because we're saying that we have roots and it's plural, so it would be an array of roots, but we're getting it from bootstrap. So I would imagine that file name would be called routing, because we would get the roots from routing, not from the bootstrap. The bootstrap would be doing something else, strapping other things in additionally, not just the roots. So maybe we should split this out. There's no reason to in terms of functionality, because it works, but from a refactoring point of view, from making things a little bit more readable, potentially there is the need there to refactor that. So then we do a try and a catch. So we do a response. We boot the roots. Okay, that's cool. And then we check for an exception. So if it's a 404, then we throw a 404. That's a bit strange. Why are we doing that? Why would we catch a 404, an exception of a 404, and then redirect? I guess it's because the 404... Yeah, that's an interesting one. I need to look into that, how exceptions are thrown, because I'm not sure if that's required. If it's a 404, if an exception of a 404 has already been thrown, then why are we altering the header to be a 404? A 404 exception would have a 404 in its header already, I believe. Maybe. I'm not sure. I don't know. So when I check my code, I like to do it in a very and you've noticed I'm very self-critical. So any little thing that I can spot makes me play down the quality of the code, I think. So, okay, all right, there's a couple of things here. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file. We are running in master branch. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just create a new file, just for a temporary one, which is going to call it notes.php. And the reason why is because I want to do, I want to do a bunch of to-dos. So to-do on the first one is change routing, change bootstrap to routing. Alter config. To include routing config, I think. Okay, and then the next one is, so we've come down here. So that's the bootstrap. That's fine. I went into public and I went to index. So question, does a exception with a code of 404 have a header of 404? If so, remove try and catch, because there's no need, let's just bring that down, because there's no need to, if that's the case, there's no need to run that try catch in that manner, at least. Because what we're doing here is we're saying if it's a 404, then redirect with a 404. But if it's already coming back as a 404 as a response, then maybe that's just, maybe we're catching that and redirecting it to something that is already the same. So I need to look at that. Okay. So after that, what are we doing? We've got, after the app, we've got MySQL. In here we have data. We have status.sql. Insert into status, name, internal name, values, blah, blah, blah. That's looking good. In the schema, we've got customer. Does the same, well, this creates the schema. That's good. Invoice looks good. Item looks good. Status is okay, looks good. And rebuild does a rebuild. So it does exactly what the file name says, which is good, which is what we want. So it drops the database, it creates the database, it uses the database, it then builds the tables, and then it inserts the data. So that is good. Good. Okay, so I'm happy with that. All right. So now in public we have assets. In assets we've got a CSS file, CSS directory that we don't have any CSS in, but I guess, we should keep that directory with a git keep, because that will be used. Views. Let's have a look at the views. So we've got home, index.php. Fine. Dashboard. Yeah, that's looking okay. That's looking good. Passing in the ID. It's a shame that we don't have a decent templating engine, because this is going to come up as an undefined variable. But it's not an undefined variable because of the way the mechanism works. All right, so we've got the views. They are basically controllers and then the actions, pretty much. We have templates. We have the base template. This is what each of the views include. That also includes the primary menu. And then we have section page content. So there might be a little bit of an issue here. Why are we doing on, say, index, we are including the template and then we're echoing that out, but we're not saying that this echo goes in here. So we might have to revisit how the views are being constructed, because I believe what's happening is the index, the output here, is just being put under there on line 21. Not in here. There's nothing in here to say put this in here. With Twig, of course, you've got blocks and you can do that. You can say, you know, this Twig template goes into this block. Okay. So, okay, we also have a list. What's that about? That's interesting. Why is list in here? That file doesn't make sense. Why are we in list? Why is it outside of the directory structure? Let's just have a look and see if there's anything in src, in controller, in type, in home. We have index and invoice. We have index. We have edit. We have dashboard. Yep. So we don't have we don't have list. So I think list can go. So in my to-do, in my notes, let's just close others and go into the notes here. Remove list.php from what are we? We are in. Is it templates that we were in? No, views, from views. Okay. Okay. So then we have a htaccess which does. See this defines the error document. So I'm not. Yeah. Whatever. Okay. So it does a rewrite engine. This is the base. And then any file name and directory get pushed through, and then everything else goes to index.php, which we then do the routing and all that other fancy jazz. Fancy jazz. Okay, so close that down. So now we get into the meat of it, which is the src folder. This is the big boy, the big stuff. Let's open that up. There is an awful lot of stuff to go through here, but I think that this process is a good thing. You know, as programmers, we can get very blinkered and just sort of like build, ship, and then it's like we don't give ourselves enough time to reflect on what we've built, because requirements are coming in left, right, and center, and you know, things get stacked on top of each other. Before you know it, it looks like a big Jenga game. With parts slightly misaligned and everything slightly askew. So I would like to take a little bit of time today just to, you know, and this is helping me get back into it. It's helping me remember stuff. So, okay, let's go to the src, the controller. We have abstract controller. There's nothing in it. It's just blank. It seems a bit pointless to me. You shouldn't have base classes if the base classes don't do anything. Okay, let's open that up. We've got type, we've got home, which extends abstract, and then we've got invoice, which extends abstract. So here we've got some Phpstorm errors, and this is because the void method render is used. It would be nice to get around that somehow. Also, I'm not a fan of putting the controllers in types, so I might just put a to-do app on here, a to-do thing. And this is move controllers out of type directory. Because there's no need to have that level of nesting, especially if we're going to get rid of the abstract controller. There's serious no need. And even if we were keeping the abstract controller, we could just put it in here. I know that I think I mentioned in one of my previous streams that I do prefer to have folder structures like this, but really it's just another level of stuff that you have to deal with. The whole point of refactoring is to simplify it as much as you can without, you know, damaging it. Notice I haven't actually built any new features, and I shan't be in this stream, so I do apologize if anybody's wanting to see me create new features. I won't in this stream. I'm just basically doing an audit. Okay, so let's have a look then. Let's have a look at this render. Let's open that up. All right, I see. So it's doing a render. We're passing in the template and the parameters. It's doing an OB start. We're extracting everything from the parameters into the current scope. So we're extracting that, and then we're including the template. Okay, so first of all, we're not checking whether the template exists or not. That would be wise. That would be very wise. So I think in notes we need to do check in render. Is it view render? Yep. That template exists. That would be wise, wouldn't it? Okay. And we're not actually returning anything because it's void. You know, we are including that. That becomes our thing. I just want, out of interest, is there an OB? There's an end to clean. Oh, there's a. I'm just having a look. There's an end flush. Okay, I'll have a look. I'll see if there's a way of closing this down and then perhaps returning something back. Maybe. But we certainly need to check whether or not the actual thing is included here. Okay, all right. So pretty much all of the other controllers follow this pattern, which is fine. Which I think is good. All right, so that's the controller. That's the easiest one. Okay, DB. So we got connection. Okay. So we're using appdb. That's the namespace. xpdo is missing in composer.json. Use pdo. Okay, so we got that to contend with. extpdo is missing in composer. So let's put that in notes. Okay. Well, we were on connection, weren't we? Yep. Okay. So we've got var pdo passing in the environment here in constructor. Okay. Okay. So then this gets the credentials. So why is this in connection? Why isn't this in config? You know, if we've included config, why isn't this in config? Why are we putting it here? You know, if this was an application, say if it was Magento or if it was Symfony or what have you, all of your bits and pieces would be in one single configuration section, not split across the place. This should only deal with the connection. It shouldn't be dealing with the connection credentials. So I want to somehow, on to-do, put connection creds into config.php. Somehow it might be a bit tricky to do that because we have to call from it. But this, you know, this really needs to be done in the config somehow and returned back as an array. Okay, so let's scroll down into the open. So what's this doing? We're grabbing the credential. So we could, if somehow this was configured and maybe the configuration was injected into the constructor, we could get the configuration through that. Okay, the thing is, it's this stuff. It's how the configuration is created. This underscore MySQL DB stuff is it should be done somewhere else. I think the actual alteration of the configuration, the concatenation of the strut upper env and the database. So I think that needs to be refactored a bit. And then we just call creds get creds. So here, what's going on? Creds. There is a typo in words because creds, you know, is a typo. So I want to put in another to do. I mean, notice I'm being very granular. I'm being very granular with this to do change or just do typo in creds. And what I think I might do after this is I might, or if I don't have a chance to tackle some of these today, I might take a look at putting these in GitHub and working through that. Okay, so where are we at? Connection. Okay, so if self-con is not an instance of PDO, okay, I see. So we've got public static connection. Okay. Then we get the credentials, and we create that string. Yep. Okay, to be honest, this could all be in the config, couldn't it? I mean, it's just a string of stuff, which is configuration. Okay, and then we do self-con is equal to new PDO, passing in all that bits and pieces, and then we return. Now, there's no check here to ensure that that a connection has actually been established. Let's just check something. If we do oopsie, come on. Con is equal to self con. So we've got error codes and error info. So I'm not entirely 100% sure whether the error happens when the connection has been created, or when the SQL is executed. I just want to jump in here and just have a little look. So it throws here we go. Throws a PDO exception if the attempt to connect the requested database fails. This is something that we are not checking for, a PDO exception. So really what this needs to be in is a try-catch of some description. Let's just Control-Z that. Okay, query builder. This is the interesting one because there's quite a lot here. Let's bring that down. So we've got insert, we've got update, we've got insert placeholders, we've got inserted placeholders. I'm not sure why that's ed. Fields, update placeholders, insert or update, find one by, find all, where, and find all by. Now, personally, I think this is doing too much. Personally, I think there's a lot going on here for this class. I think this class is doing not only the queries themselves, so constructing the queries themselves, so the find, where are we? The find by, the find one by. Not only is it doing that, but it's also dealing with the mechanics of how that is constructed. Because the find all, the find one by, and I think there was another one somewhere. Find all by, here we go. Yeah. So these are very lightweight. These are very lightweight, and they're calling upon, self-where and stuff, which is within this class. But I think really what I could do to make this lighter is I could call this a find builder, right? So it builds the find query, the finds, and then extend this to another class that handles the query builder. So it actually handles the placeholder updates, the fields, all of that stuff, and set that to protected, maybe. I don't know. The thing is, with the query builder, when you do something like, let's just open up a file, let's just do it in here, for instance, right? Well, actually, let's do it in the repository because it'll make a little bit more sense. So let's do another one just as an example. Let's do find or something. So what we want to do, as we can see up here, is we can do an SQL query builder find one by, but not only is the find one by exposed, but we have all of this exposed as well. So fields, where, update placeholders. We don't need any of this. Oh, you can't see it actually, can you? There we go. So fields, and really we are not exposing the right things. Update placeholders. Why should the repository have access to these things? These are utilities. These aren't going to construct you the final query. Constructing the final query happens when you run the find one by. So there's an argument. There is an argument here. Should the query builder have an interface? And should that interface define that it is find all, find one by, and so forth? And should we be implementing that interface somehow, or at least injecting that into here, into the constructor, rather than calling it straight away? So I need to, and I mean, this is a code smell. In my opinion, this is a big code smell. So that's what we need to look at. So let me capture that a minute. So if we go to the notes here, actually, I'll put in an example, otherwise I'll read it and go, what was I smoking? So find, let's do where. So in notes, so refactor query builder, and this is actually quite a big task. You know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, this is actually one of the biggest ones here that we've got so far. It's not just removing list.php, or, you know, there's a typo in creds, or add extpdo into Composer. This is actually changing the way the query builder gets passed into the repositories. So refactor the query builder so that query statements are not exposed. And then what we could do is say, put an example, e.g. be find, insert, or update and update methods. Because really what I want is, say, all of these repositories, I just want to do some sort of like, if there was a way of just saying, look, let's do repo, and it was like, you know, blah, 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 find or something, which kind of blows apart the whole calling that find one, because really that's what that would do. So I don't know. I just don't think that's a good idea. It might be a case of extending this. What does abstract repo do? Let's open that up. I'm just thinking it might be a case of doing that and exposing it here, but that's not going to work, is it? I need to look at that somewhat. That's a tricky one. That is a tricky one. But whilst we're on the subject, I think we've jumped the gun here. What were we focusing on? It was the query builder. Yeah, let's just take another look at this. Okay, so we've got the insert, we've got the update, and all that jazz. That looks fine to me. Fields, update placeholders, blah, 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 blah. So if all of that was like pushed out somewhere else, I mean, it could even be pushed out somewhere else, which is another static class, you know, with static functions and stuff, but I'm not sure. Needs a bit of work. But I think the actual general building of the SQL is okay. I mean, we know it works because the tests run, which is fine. Then this is another point. Don't do this without tests. Don't touch your code when you're refactoring if you've got no tests, because you'll break it without knowing. All right. Okay, let's just put a pin in that. I'm going to put a pin in that, and I'm going to look at that later, I think. So with the entities, we have, again, we've got type. Why? What's the point? What's the point in having this directory here? It doesn't have any benefit. There's no value being added. So I'm going to open up the notes. Remove type from entity. I've got a similar one up here, haven't I? Move controllers. Okay, so let's just follow the convention. Move entities out of type directory. Okay, so that'll make it nice and flatter. We can also get rid of the git keep from entity type. I think that was like scaffolding to have that. Do we have that in the? No, we don't have that in there. So it's this I want to remove. There's no need for that. That's pointless. Okay, so let's go through each one of these. So customer, we have abstract entity that extends. Then we have generic entity interface. Well, that's as abstract as you could possibly get because you're calling it generic entity. Okay, so let's take a look at the abstract one first. We've got ID, we've got date created, we've got date updated, and then we've got the getters and setters for all of this stuff. It's okay, apart from we're returning the abstract entity, not the actual entity that was supplied, but it's okay. So, okay, the customer. Let's have a look at the generic entity interface. Get ID, set ID, get updated, set updated, blah, 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 blah. Okay, all right. So it's just the ability to have these things available. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at the invoice. So we've got, let's continue down. So company name, first name, last name. Yeah, okay. There's an argument as to whether last name and first name are 2 words or 1 word, but because it could be surname, but that's fine. You know, we're arguing over small things here. ToString, that looks good to me. So that's changing the object into a string, and we're returning an imploded. Actually thinking about this. So we're creating a names array, an array of names, and we've only got 2 in here. That looks a little overkill. Obviously, we're checking whether or not these are empty. I mean, what happens if we've got an empty first name, but we don't have an empty last name? Well, I guess it would just be the last name that gets put through. Okay, all right, I'll leave that. Get company name, blah, blah, blah. These are all getters and setters. They're pretty boring. Nothing special here. Invoice, we've got reference, customer, items, status, total, VAT. Get reference, get all the getters and setters. Again, nothing too crazy here. With set items, we reset the items first. That's always a good thing. So we're just setting that to a blank array. And then we're looping through each of the items, and then we're adding the item. Okay, so add item, where does that live? Add item. So if false, does items contain the invoice item? If it doesn't, then we add that to the items and return it. That looks good to me. Does items contain checks for the object? If the item is the object, then we return. Fine. All right. Yeah, happy with that. Invoice item. Blah, 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 all of those things. That looks good to me. Working through the status. Set internal name. On set name, that's good. That's good. Okay. So, yeah. Abstract entity does all of those things, so that's kind of required. Wonderful. Form. Again, we have types, and we've got nothing in there. So I think what I'm going to do, because we do need forms for this project, is I'm going to just create another note. And it is remove type directory in forms. In form. Okay. All right. Whoops. All right. So helper is a large one. I'm going to skip over just due to time. Hydration. We have abstract hydrator. So we need to comment the hydrator because these are throwing date time exceptions, and we should be checking for those. But apart from that, I think these hydrators are okay because all they're doing is hydrating. The invoice hydrator hydrates the invoice, but it doesn't hydrate the invoice item. So there is that. managers. Just having a look at time. I don't want to rush through this, but at the same time, I don't want to skip over stuff. So maybe it's a case of saying, right, we've got to this point. These are the things that we can look at. And then maybe next time we do another. I mean, you shouldn't ever just do one round of refactoring, right? So yeah, I mean, let's just, first of all, let's just have a look at the notes. I'm just curious at time because time is running out. We've got an awful lot of stuff here. We've got a lot of similar stuff as well. So for example, the move entities out of type directories, the direct type directory stuff. Let's just go and quickly have a look and see if we've got anything else like that we can, yeah, we've got repositories. That should be to do. So move, let's follow convention. Move repositories. Hey, PonCT22, thank you very much for following. I do appreciate it. I do appreciate it. If you've got any questions or anything you want to just shout and say hello and all that stuff, then please do. This will be, you know, this I think this project is going to take a long time. All right, it's going to take several days, several weeks, several months to do, and it's a question of whether or not it gets to a point where I find it is acceptable, and you know. This is a problem with programming and art, I find, because I think programming is a craft, and it's when it gets to a point where you can go, yeah, this craft is okay. This craft, this art is at a thing where it is acceptable from my artistic opinion. And the thing is, you could argue, what's the point in removing all these directories, these type directories and stuff? The thing, it works, so why bother? But I can't spell repository, can I? Repository. And the thing is, it just makes it a little bit more readable and cleaner. But I completely appreciate there's no need to do it because it's not going to change the functionality of the thing. So hey, IG, awesome. Instagram. So I can't pronounce it. Ponocti22 is said that he's still at work. Still at work. Whoa, you're watching me at work? Hello, work. Hope you don't get in trouble for watching live streams or at work. I'll whisper and nobody will know. So, yeah. Interested to know what kind of work you do. So let me know if you can. Yeah. So move repositories out of type directories. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove that, and we can also remove. Let's follow the git thing, the git ignore, git keep. Here we go. Follow convention. Let's copy that in. So why am I doing this in a to-do thing? Well, I could be creating an issue for each one of these things on GitHub, which they really should be in. But this is quick because I'm not having to move from one application to the other. And when you're trying to do a very quick audit on code, it's always good to still be in the code as you're auditing it. I found this when I'm, as a freelance developer and I'm looking at other people's code or code that I've been given to update or fix where the developers don't exist there at that company anymore. So, it's a legacy project. It's very easy to jump from the code out into something else, but sometimes it's nice to contain it all. And then what you do is you go through this, you group everything to make it to have things that are quick wins, and then perhaps you make some Git stuff, GitHub issues that relate. So, for example, excuse me, moving all the type directories out, that could be a single task, right? If I was just doing this in creating issues one after the other, then it would just be, there would be a case of having to put everything back into one single Git issue, and that can be a bit lengthy and a bit troublesome. Another thing you could use, something I've been using a lot recently, is Trello. So you could use Trello boards to put all of this stuff in as well. So, Panoki22 has said, haha, no worries, mate. I'm in a corner cube. Corner cube, just looking for some inspiration as procrastination? I can't say a word today. Procrastination is about to kick in. Yeah, I know the feeling. So I really want to crack on and build this thing, but I'm trying not to, because I think that if I did, then I'll just add more mess to this code base. So it's a struggle. I really, really was struggling this morning to convince myself that we needed to refactor the code, or actually audit the code, and discipline myself, because I was like, yeah, but we could be building all of this stuff. We could be doing all of this stuff. And just going through the code is boring. You've done the code, but that's not the right mindset. So, bit of self-discipline is needed, I think, sometimes. And procrastination is something that it's a tricky one. I'm a remote developer. I work from home most of the time, and I'm freelance, and I've got a How to Code Well YouTube channel, including this Twitch stream and the podcast. So trying to fit everything in is really difficult sometimes. And procrastination, when you've got lots of stuff that you should be getting on with, and you just do not have the energy or oomph to do any of that stuff, procrastination is something that is very tempting. Sometimes you can just waste an hour just by doing absolutely nothing, right? And I don't mean just staring at a wall. It could be just like, playing a computer game, or just sort of. What I used to do when I was at university is I used to tidy my room. So whenever if you're looking at this desk here, it's a mess. But whenever you could tell, whenever a student in my halls of residence was coming up to an exam or a deadline piece of coursework, it's because their rooms were spotless. It's because they chose to clean the rooms rather than do the work. There is a little bit to that, because sometimes you need to have a tidy environment to actually have creative thinking a little bit. So I do get that, but you could, whenever I saw my flatmates and myself walking up back to our rooms with like some pledge duster or some sort of, cleaning products, you knew that actually what they should be doing is studying or cramming in. Because what would happen is that following night, they would be up all night working on the project, or at least I would be anyway, to get it on time in the morning. But they would have a lovely room to be in. So, procrastination. Okay, so we were looking at the repository types, and we were putting in the git keep, remove git keep from here. There is also a git keep from that one as well. Where's that? So that's a git keep of src. So there's no need for that. Nobody got time for that. to do from src. Like, there's no need. You're just adding. I know that these are really small in file size, right? Because they're just blank files. But really, there's no need. Okay, so there's a couple of things I've skipped over. There is the helper directory. There's the hydration. No, I've done the hydration. The managers and the repositories. These are quite weighty ones. And I don't think we're going to have a chance to do it today. But I just want to double check the tests, because we've got acceptance. We don't have any functional tests yet. That's a bit of a worry. Integration, unit tests. They look okay. Let's have a look at the... I just want to just double check the class names of these things. So DB, customer entity, CEST. That just focuses on the customers, I think. Yep. Invoice tests focuses on the invoices. Yep. I think that's okay. I think there might be an argument for breaking this off into another directory, maybe. So we have DBs in one, and then we have the actual pages in another. Because I can imagine that we're going to have, when we get to the point of actually building the front end for this, making it more, usable, and actually having HTML forms and everything, then I would imagine that we would have a lot more acceptance tests to, clicking through forms and all of that stuff. So I can imagine that we would need to have some form of segregation with all of this. Okay, so the integration, again, it's all in one folder, which is okay, I guess. We're prefixing all of this with DB. And I think that was because I was thinking that there might be other types of integration tests to use. So if we were to put that in a folder called DB, I could drop the DB prefix, maybe. But I would only do that if there was another type of integration that wasn't DB, because then there's no point in having that folder. Much like I've done here with the units, I've got a DB folder here and an entity folder. So that's testing the query builders and the connections. Okay, that's good. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a note and say haven't checked. What was it? It was helper, because helper directory is huge. Like, we've got HTTP and then we've got all of those. So there's quite a lot in the kernel to play with here. And I don't think I'm going to have time to do this. So haven't checked helper, and it was manager or manager. I think it was just those two. Yet. Okay, so let's before we make any decisions on what we're going to do next, let's just first of all let's do a docker ps-a. Let's just actually see what's in here. So if we do docker docker compose exe web bash, can you see that on the screen? Yep, good. Open that up. So we're now in the container, and I should be able to do vendor bin code set run. We're going to run all of the tests. So it's 15 acceptance tests, 13 integration tests, and I think there was a lot more in terms of unit tests, 87. So we've got here 115 tests altogether, 235 assertions. We do have 2 failures. So I think what I need to do is obviously fix these failures, and this is an interesting one, because these failures are the 404 errors. And the 404 errors kind of relate to they're both the same thing, page not found. So failed asserting that on page not found contains the word page not found. And asserting that there was nothing, there's no title element in the page not found test. Nothing huge, nothing major, but stuff I really want to fix and sort out before we actually move on to that. So I think what I'm going to do in the to-do is fix the failing 404 acceptance tests. And what I'm going to do, let's snuff these out. Let's find what they are. Let's do run acceptance -G, and these are, actually, let's just run the whole thing again. So this is just running the 15 acceptance tests. I want to find out what they are. So we go to acceptance, not found page. Okay. So I want to do -G. Is this the one? One of them at least? Yes. And then, so there's that. Not found. Okay, there's only one not found test here. That's, oh, okay, two. Hang on. Make some room. I'm getting confused. So there is 2 failures, but I've only ran 1 test. Not found. Test the response code for 404 page. Why is that green? That's very weird. Okay, so test the response code for a 404 page. I am on there. Make sure that the response code is 404. I can see that that is not found. Let's just remove those 2 for a minute. Comment that out. Run that. So the problem here is that it is throwing a 404. We have the response code of 404. But the page of the 404 isn't. I think it's in public. Isn't this. That's the problem. That's the problem here. Okay. So in the notes then, I can do fix the 404 failing acceptance tests. The code to run those tests is this. And also, it is failing due to not running, and it was public 404.html. And I think really we need to also cope with things like 500 errors, so we should have a 500.html file. So I'm gonna probably take a look at that. That is a piece of work, I think, because there's from what I can remember, and this is something that we were playing with a long time ago, was in the conf file. Was it in the conf file? Maybe not. There was some way of redirecting to here. I think it was maybe it was even in the index. So it's redirecting to that. But I don't want to redirect to this because that's going to give a 200 OK. So I need to redirect to this file, but with the header of OK. Okay, so then there is a piece of work to do with that. Whoops. I'm just going to check. So you can't see this because this is a pop-out window, but what I'm doing is I'm just reverting any changes apart from the notes. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to take this away and I'm going to probably write some GitHub issues based on these notes. We'll take a look at some of these tomorrow morning at 7:30 BST, same time as today. And yeah, once we get down this list, I think then it will be a case of working through the front end and making the front end nicer. I'll take a couple of judgment calls on these things because not all of these things are, well, some of them are like a nice to have, right? But not all of them are overly required. However, there's some big meaty ones in here. The refactoring of the query builder, the fixing of the 404s, does the exception code of a 404 have a header of a 404 type thing, which I guess is a bit related to the other one. So there are a couple of meaty ones in here. So I'm not thinking that this is going to be a quick thing, and we probably will do this again once the code evolves even further, especially when we get to the things like the forms and the the actual displaying of the pages, dealing with post requests and all that other jazz, all that other good stuff. So this project is going to take a bit of time. I hope you don't mind that is the case. What else am I doing today? I've got all the freelancey stuff that I'm doing, which I can't really talk about, but I'm also interviewing on the podcast for a future podcast episode. So that's pretty cool. So if you haven't done so already, please check out How to Code Well on podcasts. That's iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, all places that you can get the podcast from. Just search for How to Code Well. What I do is every week I interview a guest within the web development or programming industry. And we've had some superb guests on. Every guest has been superb in my book. Last week we had Anna Felina on, and we were talking about legacy code, and she's extremely talented speaker and consultant. She deals with a lot of legacy code. So we were talking about that, and we've got guests on this Friday, and we've got we've had about 30 odd guests in total, something like that, 28, 30. So yeah, and they're about an hour long. They're both audio and they're on the video. So if you want to watch the interview, then they're on YouTube, How to Code Well. Plus I've got a ton of courses on YouTube and other bits and pieces like that too. Something I just want to end with is that the Twitch stuff, we've recently become affiliated, which is amazing. So if anybody fancies subscribing to the Twitch channel, please consider doing so. That would be fantastic. There is emotes and there is subscriber badges. They've all been created. But I just really wanted to end this, and I know that usually the Sunday streams that I do are more. There's more people in the Sunday streams. So I will reiterate this on the Sunday stream this Sunday. I just wanted to say, though, on record, a massive thank you to everybody who has watched and contributed and been involved and asked questions on the chat. It's been fantastic. We are building a lovely community here on Twitch, as well as in the other places such as Instagram and Twitter and YouTube. It's a lovely sort of happy place for coders. It's nice. I like it. And I'm very proud of how to Code Well has grown up in these past few years. And I just wanted to say a massive thank you, because I couldn't do any of this without you guys and girls and your recommendations and suggestions on what I should be covering are, I read all the comments. I might not get back to all the comments straight away because there is a lot of comments to go through. But I do, and I would love to create this even further and make a bigger and better community. And I just want to thank everybody who has done this. It sounds really cheesy, but I really do. I really appreciate everybody's input. It's fantastic. So thank you very much. I'm going to I'm going to shoot off because my tea is cold, and I've got to get on with other things because it's coming up to 9 a.m. and I've got meetings and other bits and pieces to get on with. Such is the life. But thank you ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everyone, and I will see you again tomorrow at the same time, 7:30 BST, 7:30 British Summer Time, here on the How to Code Well Twitch channel. Thank you very much for watching. Happy coding, everyone. Ta-ra. Bye-bye. I'm going now.